Hi guys, this is iCaveAnswers. This is stuff that was going to go into our main show today, but instead I have put it into a separate show because the main show was already like 28 minutes long. So you can go and check the main video out on the channel, but for now, let's get into some of your questions. If you ever want to ask a question on iCaveAnswers, all you need to do is use the hashtag iCaveAnswers down in the comments section of any of our videos and you will get an answer. I'm iCave, Dave, and I simplify Apple so that everything just works for you. And if you want the latest Apple leaks, news, and rumours every weekday at 12 UTC, like this video, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell so you can join the notification squad, and you can get a shout out in a following video.
Nadim Kabir asks, iCaveAnswers, do you think the 14-inch MacBook will replace both the higher-end and lower-end versions of the MacBook Pro?
Okay, so what we're expecting to happen, and this is only an expectation at this point, this is what I think would make sense for Apple to do, is once the 14 and 16-inch MacBook Pros come, I think they will both come with just M1X initially, purely because I think the M1X is the power chip that they are going to put in MacBook Pros going forwards. I think that the 13-inch will continue to exist until M2 is released, and then it will either get a slight price drop or it will be discontinued completely, and then they may release a 14-inch that contains M2 and then have a 14-inch with M2X going forward as the upgrade option. I think the 16-inch MacBook Pro will only have M1X, and then we'll have M2X and only have the X chips. That's my thoughts, but I'm not 100% sure anymore because Apple's released an iMac with M1 in it, and I didn't think they were going to do that either. But that's my thought, is that the M1 version with the 13-inch chassis will stay around for a little while, probably with a little bit of a price drop. And then I think that the MacBook Air won't get an X chip. The MacBook Air will always stay with just the M1, M2, M3 generations as that gets brought out. And that will be our lower-end Mac.
Abhirup Shome asks, iCaveAnswers with the M1 chip in the new iPad Pro, can we expect a new iPadOS, which might support Mac apps, like Mac iWorks and FCPX?
This is something that we touched on a little bit earlier in the video. We can expect a new version of iPadOS that will come at WWDC, as it always does. I don't think they're going to bring the Mac versions of iWorks, because iWork already exists for the iPad, and it's pretty much just as good. So I don't think they'll do that. There might be an option where when you dock to an external display, or when you use it with keyboard and mouse, it gives you a little bit more flexibility, or it doesn't hide all of the controls in the same way. But I think that's the way that it will work. Final Cut Pro, as I said, I think will come to the iPadOS as well, but I think it will be re-engineered with iPadOS first, which sounds scary, but I don't think it will be. And then Final Cut Pro on the Mac will kind of maybe expand on what you can do on the iPad, but maybe not necessarily. Maybe it'll just be a case of it having the option to use more memory and things like that. I don't think, to be honest, that the codecs and things will be much different on the Mac versus the iPad. What will be interesting is if we see something like motion or compressor come into the iPad as well, or whether we get something where you can use Final Cut to do your editing on the iPad and then potentially offload it to the Mac to do the rendering with compressor. That's another possibility.
Aziz Rahman asks, iCaveAnswers, I'm curious to know what you think about the bezels on the new iMac. I don't hate them as much as a lot of people seem to, but why do you think they haven't gotten rid of them, or at least put them in black?
I'm not 100% sure why everyone thinks that all bezels should disappear entirely. Screens don't necessarily need to go right to the edge. I think when you look at the iMacs right now, I think we need to do a whole video where we review like the evolution of the iMac in total. And I know I talked about some of the references that they've put into this going back. The front of that, if you were to have a white chin, would look very much like the iMac G5. The white bezels kind of go back to what we had on the G3 and the G4. The G4 in particular, which is the sunflower iMac, has always been thought of as the most beautiful Mac that's ever been made, pretty much, by, I think, most people. It's between that and the Cube for me. So the white bezels shouldn't really be like a massive issue for people. Now, I understand for video editors, photo editors, you might want it to kind of just disappear into the edges of the screen, and that's fine. But as we've said before, I don't think that these are designed for the pros. I think that when we get the pro version, it is going to come with the black bezels, and I think it's partially designed to give you a visual differentiation between a consumer version and a pro version. So this is your stylish version, and then the black one will be your powerful version. That's probably my thoughts, and I think we will get space grey, and I think we will get graphite and those kind of colours for the pro ones as well, but hopefully we'll also get a little bit of colour, so maybe you can have like a deep red or a deep blue that comes on those two.
RiggsSec asks, iCaveAnswers, do you think Apple will have expand to other chip providers besides TSMC? If so, who with Intel being on the outs with Apple?
So I don't think that there is any issue with this at all. I think that Apple has absolutely as much chip capacity as they would want at TSMC, and TSMC is looking at building more facilities as well. I think that Apple and TSMC are probably about as tight as anyone gets. I don't see Apple using anyone but TSMC going forward. Now, there's a lot of talk about chip shortages right now. Apple is not experiencing these. There is no chip shortage that is affecting Apple. Now, the things that might start to affect Apple going forward is storage issues, because there's new cryptocurrencies that I think are storage-based for some reason. I'm not quite sure why this is happening, but I've seen some news recently that storage prices are going to go up because a lot of that storage is being bought up by miners too. So that's a little bit of a concern. But in terms of the actual silicon that's going into their processors, Apple has got as much as they need for the foreseeable future with TSMC, and they've bought up most of the capacity that they've got for new process nodes as well going forward. So once we get to 4 and 3 nanometer technology, Apple is going to be there first and with as much as they need.
İmran Ali Dharamsi asks,
iCaveAnswers, do you think that they'll keep the M1 MacBook Pro for sale even when they announce the M1X?
Yeah, I think we've kind of covered this in one of the earlier videos, in one of the earlier questions as well. M1 MacBook Pro is going to stay around. I don't think it will change in price either until M2 comes. It might disappear when the M2 arrives, because I think that the MacBook Air has proven itself as being quite capable for the M series chips. I don't think it really suffers enough from the thermal throttling for it to be an issue. But I think that the M2 MacBook Pro will probably go into that 14-inch form factor.
Vinay Spidey asks, iCaveAnswers, do you think there would be M2 MacBook Air in late 2021? And will the mini LED technology will be only available for higher-end MacBook models, same as happened with iPad Pro?
I think you're right. I think the mini LED displays will only come to the MacBook Pros. I don't think that we're going to see MacBook Airs with mini LED, because the price is probably going to be slightly prohibitive there. But I do think that we are going to see a MacBook Air coming in 2021 with M2. I think that the 14-inch MacBook Pro will probably have an M2 option and an M2X option down the line. But I think that the MacBook Air will stay with an LCD display for now. That's my thoughts. So, yeah. So, guys, thank you so much for watching. As I said earlier in the show, please let me know if you've got any thoughts for what you want me to do with the channel going forward. If there's anything that I don't do that you would like to see, if you disagree with the stuff that I'm telling you, then by all means, let's argue in the comments. I love telling people why they're wrong about stuff. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.